Hi there, thanks for joining me today for this webinar. We're going to be talking about having a plan B. So let's get into it. My name is Rebecca. I'm a project officer here at Flinders University. I work in a team called Education Pathways, and so basically my job is to talk to students and young people and help them figure out what their education pathway will be after school, whether that's uni or TAFE or into the workforce, whatever the right direction is for you. That's my job, to help you find that out. So let's get right into it. Today we are going to be looking at these topics. So we're going to talk about the reasoning behind having a backup plan and the benefit of having a plan B. We're going to talk about careers and how careers are not static, how they change and grow over time. We're going to talk about setbacks and how they're not a barrier. They're not going to stop us from doing anything, but how they can be a chance to reflect and regroup. And we are going to talk about how regularly reflecting upon your skills, your interests and your values can make it easier for you to link your skills and knowledge with different opportunities and job clusters. So wherever you set out in your career pathway may not be, you might not end up exactly where you thought you would, but that's perfectly fine. So that's what we're going to get into today. Let's get started. So everybody's career is going to look quite different. So even two people, if they have the same job, what they will have done to get there, the pathway they've taken, maybe even the education that they've received will not look the same. Our career pathways encompass our entire working experience, from our very first job, so maybe your casual job at school. I started working at Spotlight when I was in high school, to wherever we end up before retirement. Each job that we have contributes to our growth and development for the next job. When I think about 10 people who I went to university with, we all did the same degree, and years later none of us are actually working in the same industry or job. I studied politics at university, and I have friends who work in defence, in international aid programs, in foreign affairs, climate policy, public service, working for the government, law, and I do something quite different in working for a university. So even though we started in the same degree and we received that same education, a few years later we're all doing very different things. So the career ladder that you might be familiar with is kind of an older way of looking at career pathways and trajectories, because it doesn't really work that way in today's society. That linear progression, thinking about one step above, is not really as common as it once used to be, because there's more opportunities, more competition as well, and less clear lines of progression, because that job landscape changes all the time. This will sound like almost a strange example now, but my dad is a school teacher, and he has been a school teacher at the exact same school, if you can believe it, for almost 40 years. But more and more that story is less common, because people want to move jobs and move cities, move countries, and look for new opportunities every few years. So very rarely is a person's career a straight line from point A to point B. In reality, most pathways involve twists and turns, changes, and learning that takes place along the way. And I find it's helpful not to expect each new job to necessarily be a promotion, but rather, is it a chance to learn something new and contribute different skills? So modern careers are often, a connection of webs, rather than that ladder that we've talked about. So networks, education and training, the opportunities that we do and don't take will influence how that job network unfolds. And the good news is that we do have the power to influence that and direct our connections through our experiences and our learning and our knowledge along the way. So let's have a think now about what happens when things don't go the way that we thought they would. So a setback is an interruption to our progress for whatever reason, something that gets in our way. They are really common and they are normal, and they happen to all of us. Perhaps you've faced some already. So maybe you don't get a job that you applied for, or if you're at school, perhaps you didn't get the results that you wanted in an exam, didn't make the team that you wanted to get on. Setbacks are inevitable, so we can't help them. We are all going to face them. And like I said, you might have faced some in your lives already. There have been times when I didn't get a job that I really wanted and I thought I was really well suited for. And if you've ever had that experience, and you probably have, it can feel like a real kick in the face. But it does give us a chance to reflect and to try to think, when we face a setback, what else can I do? Is there something else I could do to prepare? Can I use this time I now have? Are there other skills that I can develop to highlight my knowledge? Could I practice my interview skills a bit more for the next time? Sometimes setbacks are often unexpected, and for that reason it's really hard to prepare for them in advance. There are a lot of things outside of our control, and one of the best things we can do is to understand when things are outside our control, and to know that we can only influence things that are in our circle of influence. And this current health crisis is a bit like that. There are so many people who have lost their work and had lots of other ripple effects, and that was very much outside of their control. If you're still at school, maybe a setback might be not getting the ATAR that you wanted to get into the course that you're interested in. But while setbacks aren't usually positive experiences, they do force us to grow and adapt, which is the key to learning and growing. So perhaps that might be taking the time to do an online course, or refocus on what is actually really important to you. If it's an ATAR that you are after, investigate what alternate entry pathways there are, because believe me, I'm in a position to know there are many, and an ATAR is never going to stop you from getting where you want to go. So the growth, the learning and the development that comes from us dealing with our setbacks can shape us and make us more resilient and better prepared for the next one. So some top tips for dealing with setbacks to get back on the horse. Setbacks don't have to define us. How we respond to them does. So don't give up, try again, and keep working towards your success. Refocus. So identify what went wrong. What was in your control, what is out of your control, and what can you learn as you plan to move forward. And start planning your comeback. So whether it's sidestepping, taking a new approach, revising what you are aiming for, the best way forward is to start planning and start doing. So this is where our backup plans are going to come in handy. And one of my favourite sayings is, when you're challenged, do you respond with defensiveness or possibility? And this can refer to anything. So if you are asked to do something new, if something doesn't go right, if that challenge comes to you and you say, well, that wasn't my fault, or I can't do this, perhaps we could all take a breath and think, okay, well, what can I learn from this? What possibilities is this bringing? Perhaps not getting a job, or the job I applied for, has meant that I will be still looking for jobs, see a different one and apply for the job that was actually meant for me. So let's move on and have a think about how it is helpful to, rather than thinking about a really specific job that we're interested in, to think about a career industry or a job cluster. So if we can think about an industry we would like to be involved in rather than a specific job, it will help us to have a range of potential ideas that we can explore. And these options can become our backup plans or alternate plans. And then if we do end up having some setbacks, we have quite a broad foundation to build upon later on. So you might like to use this for your own example as well, these concentric circles, to work through identifying the industry and associated jobs that you are interested in. I'll go through an example. My example is about video games, and you can see what we're going to do here. And you can use this for any industry that you are interested in. So you can see we put video games in the middle, and then we've got some broader associated careers around the outside. So you can see what we've done here. Now, I like to think about the broad genres here. So with video games, you can see there's actually quite a lot of different jobs that we've come up with. But you can think about these in kind of three different fields. So perhaps we could think about the IT side of video games. So software development, software engineering, the writing, and then we could think about the artistic or creative side. So animating, designing, being the artist, sound engineer, music composer. And then we could also think about the management, business, sales kinds of fields. So the marketing, management, sales, working for the label. So all of these things are still within the realm of video games. So there's more than one way to pursue your goal. If you think, well, I don't want to be, or I'm never going to be able to be an esports champion, there are a lot of other ways to still be involved if this is the field that you're interested in. So thinking about this also helps us to know that we could be thinking about our different careers as stepping stones. So could jobs in this field, could you be doing them while you're pursuing further training that will help you gain more experience to move into other areas within this industry, perhaps a more niche area or an area requiring more experience or training? So using jobs within these industries will allow you to hone similar skill sets and then will likely transfer from one career to the next. Also, focusing on jobs that allow you to focus on strengths are more likely to give you job satisfaction. And being satisfied and fulfilled in our work is one of the key ways that we can really gain job satisfaction. And sometimes being a part of the broader industry that you love and contributing to it is really important. So think about a movie. My example might be a Marvel movie, let's say Avengers. And if we think about that movie, I might never be an actor myself, but think about how many other people contribute to those movies. So we've got the directors, the composers, the extras, set designers, studio backers, costume designers, makeup artists, animators, special effects designers, and so many more. You know, you don't hang around for the credits for these movies because they go for about 20 minutes, listing the thousands of people that have contributed to these movies. So there is more than one way to contribute in an industry that you are interested in, and being a part of that broad industry can be equally fulfilling because you are contributing to something that's bigger than yourself. And also, making a start in an associated career can give you the chance to see what the industry is like and if it is really going to suit you. You know, perhaps you'll get a sense of a job that you really like or don't like. Perhaps the conditions aren't what you would most prefer, so you can look a little bit further afield. A colleague that I used to work with in my field, she did her chef qualifications through TAFE. She did her certificate in commercial cookery. And when she started to do her work experience, she sort of realised that she didn't actually want to work as a chef because she didn't like the hours. You know, she wanted to be able to spend her evenings with friends and family. And so she considered, well, how can I use my cooking skills and my love for people, and how can I use that in another way? So she ended up deciding to train as a food technology teacher. So that's just another example of thinking about your skills and your interests and how they can be applied in different ways. There's not just one way to use your strengths. So I know we talk a lot as well about how jobs are changing all the time. So developing your skills around different clusters can help you navigate through different opportunities. So these are also called transferable skills. So let's talk a bit more about that now. So transferable skills are those that you can use across different jobs. And they are one of the main things that employers are looking for. So these sorts of skills aren't necessarily, they can be, but not necessarily picked up through formal education like a uni degree. You can nurture these skills in many different ways. So if you have a look and you can see there things like problem solving, coordination, decision making, they could also be strengthened through playing team sports. Or service orientation and people management might be built through having a part-time job. Other things like volunteering, if you're a parent, doing any type of formal or informal learning can help build these sorts of skills. And these are skills that are really used in any role across all professions. You know, if you are at school at the moment, you might not enjoy doing group projects or speeches. I used to not really enjoy doing speeches at school either, but they're designed to help you build your teamwork and communication skills, which are highly sought after. And, you know, having practiced doing speeches at school, you can see I do have to do a bit of public speaking in my job now. So that is what that practice was designed to help me to do. And having done quite a few job interviews, in the past few years since I finished school, I can let you know that the first couple of questions they ask might be about your qualifications. So do you have the right certificate, the right qualification, the right degree for this job, and any previous experience that you have. But the rest of the questions are generally about these kinds of skills. They might ask you, well, how do you deal with having a teammate who's difficult to work with? What do you do? Or how do you work under pressure? Tell us about a time when you've had to negotiate or convince someone of your point of view. Tell us about a time where you've had to show really good judgment. And so building up these skills, and it doesn't really matter what industry that you're really interested in going into, having examples for each of these top skills are going to really serve you as you build your career into the future. So let's move on from there. All right, we're going to talk about a couple of examples of people who you may or may not be familiar with, who have exemplified what we've been talking about. So thinking about associated careers and transferable skills. Now, the first example is Matthew Liptak. He was an AFL footballer, a professional footballer for many years in Adelaide. Now, professional athletes can't be professional athletes for their whole career. Depending on the sport, they might have to retire by the time they're 30, 35, 40, and that's still a long career that you would have after that. So what Matthew did was he studied to become a doctor. So he became an orthopedic surgeon. And if you have done your ACL, like I did, and me and every other netball and soccer player in the world, then you probably would have seen an orthopedic surgeon. So what he's done there is that he has wanted to still work within that industry of sport, and he's wanted to work with players within his industry, and he's found a different way to do that by being a doctor. He's also developed a rehabilitation equipment. It's called a Maxim skate, which is useful for athletes when they're recovering from knee and ankle operations. So you can see that that's one way of still being involved in the industry that you really love in a different way, and still being able to contribute and help your teammates. You might recognise Zoe Foster-Blake. She's quite big on social media. She started out writing for magazines like Cosmo and Dolly back in the day, and then she moved into editing. She's written children's books and young adult books, and launched a skincare brand as well. So you can see there that that's not necessarily, a career ladder. That's more a career web, a career progression. One thing has built, she's gone into slightly different areas, but she's built upon her audience and her, and her brand to keep building a bigger and better career for herself. Next, we've got Harry Styles from One Direction. And, he started in a group, One Direction. He's launched his solo career. And then he's also gone into fashion and is now quite vocal about gender equality. And he's also moving into the film industry as well. So again, just another example of, not necessarily going up a ladder, but, moving within those concentric circles that we've talked about. If you're a little bit older, like me, you might remember Victoria Beckham. She was Posh Spice in the Spice Girls, great band. And, so she was a pop singer many years ago, and then has moved into having a fashion line and perfume, and, there's quite a lot going on there for her as well. So, you don't have to have that one job forever. You can build and grow and use your skills in different ways. So just sort of summing up for our webinar, we've talked about planning, having a plan B, we've talked about setbacks, we've talked about associated careers, so using those circles. We've talked about transferable skills, so how can you use those common skills in lots of different areas. And finally, this isn't something that we just are going to do once. It's really important to keep reflecting, to keep thinking, And then we can be flexible and we don't need to be afraid of changing. Also really good to think about is, do I need any further education? Is there more training or more qualifications or more experience that might be helpful? Who can I speak to about this? If you're at school, a really great place to start might be your careers advisor. They know all there is to know about all this kind of stuff. If you're in the workplace, maybe you could think about reaching out to a colleague, someone who's a mentor, or you can reach out on LinkedIn to someone who's in a position that you're interested in and ask them for advice. Most people are really happy to help. Where can you do more research? University pages or industry pages are really great. Job Outlook is a government website that has a host of career resources to look at. And just, a reminder, we can keep doing this. We can keep looking for opportunities. We can keep reflecting and keep repeating this process throughout our careers. So I hope you found this informative and helpful and interesting. And if you are interested in learning a bit more, there are lots of different ways to contact Flinders. That phone number at the top would be great. If you have any questions, you can just give us a ring. No matter where you are in your career pathway, if you're still at school, you can still call us and find out what your best option might be. So I hope everyone's found that kind of interesting. You can feel free to get in touch with us if you have any questions. But thank you for listening and have a great day.